Tonight, the votes have been cast and the counting continues.
It ain't over till every vote is counted.
But the fight over who won the 2020 presidential election is far from over.
We'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And as Democrats keep control of the U.S. House.
But I'm here just to sing the praises of our House Democrats and our candidates.
In the upper chamber of the Capitol, Republican control of the Senate seems to be secure. Plus, the role of the evangelical vote in the 2020 election. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
As ballot counting continues, a narrowing path to re-election for President Trump. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jenna Browder.
And good evening. I'm John Jessup. Well, the fate of the presidency hangs in the balance tonight as the race in key battleground states remains too close to call.
Wisconsin was called for Joe Biden this afternoon, and the former vice president is also leading it with hundreds of thousands of votes in outstanding Michigan and Pennsylvania. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the latest. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, at this point, not Trump or Trump have the 200, Trump or Biden, that is, have the 270 electoral votes needed to win. The historic number of mail-in ballots have delayed the results, and that was expected. President Trump tweeted out moments ago, "We are winning in Pennsylvania big," but the PA Secretary of State just announced there are millions of ballots left to be counted. The Trump campaign filed suit in Michigan to halt the vote count, claiming it was denied meaningful access to observe opening of ballots. They also demand a recount in Wisconsin after Biden won by 20,697 votes. The Trump campaign writing, "The president is well within the threshold to request a recount, and we will immediately do so." Senator Mitch McConnell, who won re-election in South Carolina, spoke today about the presidential race.
I think the president ran a heck of a race. Everybody was writing him off, but he had no shot. And he went out and literally worked himself to death for the last 2 months with multiple rallies every day and turned it into a cliffhanger.
And McConnell is from Kentucky. A quick correction there. As for the former Vice President Joe Biden, he is urging his supporters to be patient and that, quote, "We're on the right track to win this election." He also has been active on Twitter, writing, "To make sure every vote is counted, they're setting up the largest election protection effort ever assembled because Donald Trump doesn't get to decide the outcome of this election. The American people do." Biden says, very simple, every vote counts. And it could take a day, a week, or possibly even longer to get them all tallied. John, Jenna?
All right, White House correspondent Ben Kennedy, thank you. Well, it is not just the White House, the presidency, just part of the overall election equation and the balance of power in Washington.
That's right. This election, several key Senate races have been at the forefront as Democrats sought to seize control of the upper chamber on Capitol Hill. CBN senior correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now with more. Eric?
John, Jenna, in all, 23 Republican-held Senate seats were on the ballot this year compared with 12 held by Democrats, creating a dangerous playing field for the GOP. Democrats knew they only had to flip 3 or 4 seats to gain control of the Senate. A huge win for Democrats came in Colorado, where Republican incumbent Cory Gardner was unseated by John Hickenlooper.
Your message is loud and clear. It's time to put the poisonous politics of this era behind us and come together to move forward.
And in Arizona, Democrat Mark Kelly drove out incumbent Martha McSally.
There's only one way we're going to solve these problems, and that's by working together. Now, some of you watching tonight did not vote for me, and that's okay. I'm going to be your senator, too.
Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst rose victorious against Democratic challenger Teresa Greenfield after a hard-fought campaign. Ernst calling for healing.
Whether you supported me or not, this has been a very difficult year and a very challenging election for all of us. People on both sides feel divided. Emotions and those wounds are very, very raw. But the election is over, and it's time to start the healing. We need to turn down the rhetoric and start listening once again.
It was a nail-biter in South Carolina, where Republican Senator Lindsey Graham faced major opposition, backed by big bucks from Democrat Jamie Harrison. But in the end, Graham is going back to Washington.
Here's the message I got. People like what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Democrats lost ground in Alabama as Tommy Tuberville defeated incumbent Doug Jones. Jones won the seat in a special election back in 2017, the first time a Democrat had won that seat in 25 years.
Alabama, welcome back to the Republican U.S. Senate.
It took until Wednesday afternoon, but Maine's contentious Senate race was finally called for Republican incumbent Senator Susan Collins.
Throughout all of this extraordinary campaign, I have been strengthened every day by the support and hard work of each and every one of you.
There are still some races too close to call, including the one in North Carolina between incumbent Tom Tillis and Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham, and in Michigan, where Democrat Gary Peters is trying to beat back Republican John James. There are also two Senate races in Georgia that are heading for a runoff. So this balance of power story, John and Jenna, is certainly not over.
All right, Eric Phillips, thank you. And here now to break down last night's biggest stories, trends, and what's still to come. Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics, and CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. Both of you, good to have you with us this right after Election Day. Tom, to you first. You know, long before Election Day, you were talking about the problems we could see with mail-in voting.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I never bought into the idea that this was going to be some Biden blowout, blue wave. It's just not compatible with you know, the status of the country. We're an evenly divided, deeply evenly divided country, and we saw that, you know, the sort of the enthusiasm of Republican voters sort of rising to meet President Trump in the final days of this campaign. We knew there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for Joe Biden per se, but there was enthusiasm on the Democratic side to vote against President Trump. And so, yeah, and we ended up in a situation which, you know, a lot of us thought we'd be here, where we have, you know, razor thin margins in a number of states. We have a bunch of states that are counting mail-in ballots for the first time. And we're going to get, you know, into the sort of the nitty gritty of this. And it never is pretty when you get down and look at how the sausage is made, and you get into, you know, situations where there are recounts and lawsuits. But that's kind of where we are.
David, to Tom's point, we still have several outstanding contests with races to be called. Who has the advantage with the mail-in ballots, even now as the Trump campaign mounts its legal challenge?
John, it really depends on where you're looking around the country. I mean, in Georgia, there is concern by the Trump campaign, in essence, that if you might have you do have outstanding mail-in ballots coming in some heavy Democrat counties, and so I think that's part of the concern there. But you look out to Arizona, there's over, 600,000 or so ballots still outstanding, and if Trump can do well, he's only down by, I think it's, about 90,000 votes or so, and you got 600,000 out there. So, you know, it really depends on what's going on. I know I just said Arizona. That's right. Technically, the Associated Press is called Arizona. Don't be surprised. I know this would be crazy, but then again, it's 2020, so everything's crazy in this year. Don't be surprised if potentially Arizona gets pulled back. If that's the case, that changes the whole new electoral map in a whole crazy way and just puts me into an electoral coma at that point.
Yeah, David, as Tom was saying, you know, it looks like this is headed to litigation. The president has already promised to take this election to the Supreme Court. How does he plan to do that? And do you think his case is legitimate?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah, to David.
Yeah. Look, I think he's going to look in Pennsylvania. We're hearing about cured ballots. You know, this idea that if a ballot comes in with a signature that might be smudged in a certain county there in Philadelphia area, they're having the voter come back in, say, is this you? Is that not you? So they're curing the ballots. Well, that might sound okay, but here's the problem. Most of the other counties in Pennsylvania are not having anybody cure the ballots. So does that sound fair at all? So I think that's going to be part of it. The other part of of it is prepaid envelopes when it comes to mail-in ballots. Many of them don't come back with a postmark on it, a post date, if you will. And so if that's the case, well, then wait a minute. You have until Friday, November 6th to send in your ballots. What does that mean exactly if it's coming in with no postmark on it?
Tom, quickly to you. Democrats thought they might get another blue wave in the Senate. They, of course, fell short. To you, what's the biggest takeaway there?
The biggest takeaway from this election is that I think Donald Trump, I think the Republican Party is going to owe him a massive debt of gratitude because I think, and the irony of it might be that he's the one who doesn't survive, but he pulled along senators, Republican senators in North Carolina, in Iowa, in Montana, all across the country, pulled along House members. I mean, the Republicans won. Nobody saw the Republicans picking up House seats this election. They all thought Nancy Pelosi would expand her majority. And instead, they did exceedingly well. Republican turnout was absolutely through the roof. Donald Trump received more votes than any, Republican nominee in history. The only problem is Joe Biden may have received a few more votes than any candidate in history. And so, but I do think the story of this election was that Trump single-handedly energized the Republican Party, and managed to save Republicans up and down the ticket in these battleground states all around the country.
All right. Tom Bevan with Real Clear Politics, David Brody. Thank you both very much. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Record turnout for voters of faith. The details when Faith Nation returns.
Before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch the Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Well, welcome back. Faith voters showed up at the polls Tuesday with what looks to be greater turnout than in 2016.
Yeah, the Faith and Freedom Coalition says Christian voters provided on the margin of victory in big U.S. Senate races. Faith and Freedom also saying they could be important in determining if President Trump stays in the White House. Here's senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener.
To get voters of faith to the polls, Faith and Freedom launched a $45 million campaign in key states its data showed as socially conservative Christians and frequent churchgoers. Volunteers knocked on more than 5 million doors.
If every legally cast ballot is counted in every state where the results are not yet finalized, that he'll be reelected.
The winner of the presidential election remains unknown.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
I'm here to tell you tonight, we believe we're on track to win this election.
But in spite of the legal challenges that may be ahead, the Faith and Freedom Coalition is confident President Trump will prevail, largely thanks to a record number of Christians who came out to vote.
We still have to mine this data a little bit more, but it's looking like up to 4 or maybe even a little over 4 million Christians were new voters.
According to the group, that 4 million is the largest turnout for the demographic since exit polling began, with President Trump taking home 81% of the support of white evangelicals this year, the same as in 2016.
God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Joe Biden winning the lowest share of the white evangelical vote ever received by a Democratic presidential nominee.
The Christian vote continues to be very animated on issues related to life, to marriage, religious liberty, Israel, human trafficking, the justice system, et cetera. But now even more Christians are coming off the sidelines and into the game.
Faith and Freedom says the numbers show their ground game worked and that Republicans cannot win without Christian voters. He adds Democrats continue to suffer for failing to appeal to these voters of faith. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Tara, Dan Darling is an author, pastor, and senior vice president at the National Religious Broadcasters, and he joins us now to discuss how Christians across the country can help bring America together. Dan, do we need that more than ever? You know, this in particular, this season has been very divisive. And even though there remain a lot of questions, there's also the need for unity. How can the church help to bring that about?
Well, I really think the church is positioned to bring about unity, and one of the things that's been most grievous during this time is just the way, not just the way that as a society we've kind of been turned against each other in this divisive election season and with the racial tensions and COVID-19, but also the way that Christians have kind of been turning on each other. And I think this is a moment for us to say, you know, we don't know who's going to be the next president yet, but whoever is, we're going to pray for them. We're going to continue to work on the issues that we care about, religious liberty, the sanctity of human life, and those kinds of things. But then we're going to trust that the Lord is sovereign and he's in control of all things. And I think one of the things we really need to do is just say, you know, half the country thinks differently than I might think. My neighbors might have a different perspective. How can we learn from each other and listen to each other across this great divide?
Great reminder. Dan, in what ways can Christians balance the idea of being politically engaged and operating on one's convictions, but at the same time be an example of love and truth and grace to those with whom they don't agree?
Well, I really think 1 Peter 3:15 is instructive here when Peter says to have an answer for every person for the hope that lies within you, but do it with gentleness and kindness. I really do think Christians should be courageous and bold and speak up to the issues of the day, to stand up for the vulnerable, even when that's unpopular in the prevailing culture. And yet we can do it with gentleness and kindness. Sometimes we have this idea that courage and civility can't go together. But the truth is, you know, the loudest person in the room is not always the most brave. And so we need to both have courage of our convictions, even when we're swimming against the tide on some of these things. But then we also need to see the people who disagree with us, not as just, you know, avatars to be crushed online or pixels to be destroyed on social media, but people made in the image of God, people for whom, people that God loves and cares for.
In your book, A Way with Words, you discuss the best ways to engage with people online and using online conversations for good. Just a few seconds left, but how important is that, Dan, moving forward?
Well, I really think it is important. Social media is where the conversations are happening. I think the internet is here to stay. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we use these tools in ways that are helpful? And I think one of the things we have to remember is that we're in public. So when we have these disagreements online, remember people are watching. I think secondly is to remember the humanity of the people we disagree with. And remember they're whole people. They're not just the sum total of their opinions, even if they're wrong. And I think the third thing we need to ask ourselves is, what conversations do I need to engage in? And what should I just back away from?
Right. Well, Dan Darling of NRB, thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Well, the words "In God We Trust" will be featured on the newly selected Mississippi state flag. Voters in the state chose the design of the new flag Tuesday. It features a magnolia with the national motto inscribed underneath, as well as a star to represent indigenous people who originally settled Mississippi. The vote for the new state symbol comes after public backlash to the old state flag, which featured a Confederate theme. That flag was retired earlier this year over growing calls. It sent a racist message.
Up next, a faith fight at the Supreme Court, the new religious liberty case before the justices.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Watch On the Home Front today at 2:30.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Welcome back. Religious liberty returning to center stage at the Supreme Court. Today, new Justice Amy Coney Barrett heard her first case of the kind since being confirmed.
The arguments focused on a Catholic foster agency in Philadelphia that doesn't believe in same-sex marriage. Because of that, the group said it would refer gay couples to other foster agencies, and the city said that was discrimination.
Paul Strand reports on how arguments played out at the High Court.
Catholic Social Services never actually had a same-sex married couple asked to foster a child through the agency.
There are dozens of foster agencies that are available to serve gay couples in the city of Philadelphia, and there's no evidence that any gay couple has ever even tried to use CSS as its agency.
But just the idea that it would turn them away was enough for Philadelphia to boot Catholic Social Services out of the foster care business in the city.
We stand ready to provide loving homes for children in need, but our ministry is stuck on the sidelines.
Philadelphia argued it has every right to do that.
The government has broad powers to impose conditions on contractors like CSS that stand in the government's shoes performing government functions.
Here the city is reaching out and telling a private religious ministry, which has been doing this work for 2 centuries, how to run its internal affairs, and trying to coerce it to make statements that are contrary to its religious beliefs.
That's why this is a religious liberty case. Philadelphia was basically demanding the agency give up its biblically based belief about marriage to do work with the city. Or as Justice Alito put it,
the city can't stand the message that Catholic Social Services and the Archdiocese are sending by continuing to adhere to the old-fashioned view about marriage. Isn't that the case?
The statements that have been made by various officials make clear that the reason they're doing that is because they view this as some sort of odious anachronism.
A foster mom in this case said Philadelphia is harming children who need families.
It felt like I had been kicked in the stomach the day I learned the city was closing down Catholic Social Services foster program. despite a severe shortage of foster families.
Even as they legalized same-sex marriage a few years ago, the justices warned many religious believers would have to be protected because their beliefs about homosexuality aren't just personal opinions, they're determined by their holy scriptures. Now it's time to see if the justices themselves will protect those beliefs. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Supreme Court.
All right, thanks, Paul. Well, Colorado voters defeated a ban on late-term abortions in the election with about 85% of votes counted. About 59% voted against Proposition 115, which banned most abortions after 22 weeks, the only exception being to protect the life of a mother in emergencies. The measure would have punished doctors who performed such abortions.
Putting politics aside to offer hope. Still ahead, a message from second daughter Charlotte Pence Bond.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
The Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, with uncertainty still surrounding the political atmosphere in America, we decided to end with a message of hope.
Charlotte Pence Bond, daughter of Vice President Mike Pence, reminds us, regardless of your political leaning, there is a bigger story than just the election. She says this has been a tough and emotionally charged year for many Americans. You can probably relate to that. But God is still on the throne.
For the ultimate plan, I know that God's in control. I know he's in control of my life. I know that he puts leaders in authority, and I have faith in that. And if you're feeling worried or if you're anxious, just return to him. Just go back to him. Just go to his word, pray.
A timely reminder as we, await the results of this election, and a good note to end on this evening.
Timely, and it really affects no matter who you voted for.
Yeah.
We as Christians, we know that God is ultimately in control.
Indeed he is.
Well, thank you. Join us next time.
Have a good night.